This is the School Success Podcast, a podcast for school leaders to learn from other school leaders what's working and what's not, and to get inspiration and encouragement, as well as strategies to grow school enrollment, connect with families, retain teachers, recruit teachers, and everything in between. You guys are heroes, and I cannot thank you enough for pouring into this next generation that's coming behind us. My goal is you will take at least one thing away from every episode that you can take back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Please enjoy the School Success Podcast. Hey, school success makers. Today we're joined by my new friend Shawn, who is the head of school at his Christian school in beautiful Tampa, Florida. We dive into a lot in today's episode. I throw him a good bit of curveballs because I had so much curiosity and questions about some of the things we were talking about. So we talk a lot about teacher retention and recruitment in this one. I think you guys will get a lot out of it. So please enjoy the next episode of the School Success Podcast. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the School Success Podcast. I'm your host, Mitchell Slater. I'm joined by a new friend out of beautiful Tampa, Florida, Mr. Shawn Minks, who is the head of school at Cambridge Christian School over there in Tampa. They're doing some awesome things. They're a big school, and we're going to dive into a ton today, but I don't want to take thunder away from him, so I'm going to pass it off to him to introduce himself. So, Shawn, welcome to the podcast, sir.
Thanks so much. Entirely my pleasure. I haven't had a chance to do many of these things, but I'm excited to.
Awesome. Well, I know you live in a beautiful place. There's beautiful waters. You got, Super Bowl winning football team there in Tampa. So what do you like to do for fun before we kind of jump in? What's fun to do over there for you and your family?
Well, most importantly, I've only been here 9 years, so I don't claim the Buccaneers as my team. I'm a cheesehead, and so that will change. But no, we love the Tampa area. The only negative thing here is traffic, and it has been severely compounded by the whole country moving here in the last 6 months. It's gotten really crazy. Traffic's terrible. Other than that, everything is fantastic. So we love the water, and every chance I get, I'm fishing. If I have my choice, that's what I'm doing.
Oh, I love it. My wife and I moved down from Alaska 4 years ago. So Alaska is kind of like our home, and obviously love all the things Alaska has to offer, like fishing and hunting and all that. But when we moved down, Tampa was one of the places we did look at. We were looking at like that St. Pete, Tampa area. And I was like, I really, really want waves. Like I want a bigger wave. So we ended up looking East Coast, and which is why we ended up in Port St. Lucie where we are. Yeah. But I do love Tampa. My aunt lives in Tampa, and I don't blame you. And I don't claim any Florida teams either. So I think we're still going to get along okay on this, Shawn, but I am the arch rival of your team. So I'm a Chicago fan. My dad grew up in Chicago. So we'll try and be best friends on this podcast as much as we can, but it's going to be a fun year.
I'm running short on time. So no, just kidding. If you're a Bears fan, though, it's tempting to go there quickly.
I understand. And you got Rodgers back for another 4 years. So you guys should be pretty darn competitive for the next half a decade or so.
Well, we'll see. I'm not currently the biggest fan of A-Rod. I love the Packers, but he's a little frustrating at times, and even the ownership is calling it more of a year-to-year deal. We'll see.
I'm actually, oddly enough, I know this is totally off the subject line, but I was one of the only Bears fans excited that Rodgers came back. Because, of course, what he did last year saying he owned the Bears was like, no, he can't leave. Like, he can't leave saying that. We have to have another shot at winning against this guy. So we'll see what happens with Justin Fields this year on the Packers.
That's right.
I know you, again, moved there recently, Packers fan, love Tampa, love the water and fishing. Tell me a little bit about your school and how you first got involved there. I read through your bio on your website. You've been in education for a long time. You've coached sports. So kind of just give me that your history, I guess, and kind of how you ended up at Cambridge.
Sure. I'll do my best at a capsule version of that, but it occurred to me the other day that I believe I'm finishing up year 29 or 30 here this year. And all I've known is Christian school education, even though I'm a public school product. Went to Christian college and ended up starting out. We were 9 years at a Christian school in Daytona Beach, 5 years in Atlanta in a Christian school, where I became an upper school principal. 6 years in Orlando, technically Winter Garden, where I was my first head of school gig there, and then finishing up year 9. here in Tampa. As I came here actually initially as assistant head of school and with a colleague of mine from across town in Orlando, and he left in 2016 and I became head at that point.
Okay. Very good. I'm assuming you like it. You've been there 9 years. I'm assuming you love it, right?
Yeah, I really do. It's a really special place and hopefully not going anywhere anytime soon.
Good. Well, I know I didn't grow up specifically in a Christian school. My wife grew up in Christian school. I grew up in the church. I've been a youth pastor up in Alaska for 7 years and loved it. So very familiar with kind of what you guys are doing. So I love it. I love what you guys are about there in the community. One of the things I thought of, and I don't know if this is an issue or a challenge for you guys, because you and I had that quick phone call where we talked about how students, you don't require everybody that goes to the school to be a Christian, but does that also fall under for staff as well? Or is that a whole different ballgame where like, hey, we need a new teacher. It's already hard to find teachers for a lot of people, but man, they also need to be a Christian. Is that also something you guys require and are up against?
Yeah, so as far as the faculty and staff is concerned, yeah, we only hire Christ followers. In terms of the students, though, we are an outreach Christian school, kind of a mission-minded approach. So we do not have that requirement for students, and we don't have that requirement for parents. Some Christian schools have a requirement that at least one of the parents needs to be a professed Christ follower, but we don't have any of that. So and that's one of the things I really love about this school, and 3 of the 4 schools where I've served it's been that same model. And so we are in many ways a mission field, but we have a lot of Christian kids and families that come here as well. So spiritually it's a very diverse group, but when they come onto campus, the impact or the influence that will be had, or the influence that they will experience, that is from Christian people. The adults, the faculty and staff are Christians. So,
okay. And there was a Christian school in Alaska that was one of the bigger ones up there, and I remember always hearing this. I don't actually know if this was true, but they had kind of sometimes a bad rep in the community. People going, "Oh man, there's a lot of bad kids, quote unquote bad kids, that go to that school." And I was like, "Why?" And they said, "Well, dropouts from public school can't go anywhere else, so they go to the Christian school, and the Christian school takes them in." Is that okay? One, is that a true thing in the world of public and Christian schools, and is that something you guys are up against too, or kids that do get kicked out? Like, is their only option to go to like a Christian school that will take them in and help them? Is that common?
I think that those places exist. Over my 30 years in 4 different locations, it wouldn't be the first time I'd heard something like that. I don't think I can't speak for all Christian schools, but the ones I'm aware of, I don't know any that exist specifically for that purpose. But, for our school, we definitely don't take all comers. While we're in outreach Christian school, our culture is very important to us. So really, our admissions process is very specific, and that file for that prospective student goes across multiple leaders' desks in the school, and there has to be consensus that the individual is a fit for our school. So that can be, academic considerations certainly, but also behavior. And, for example, we don't look to bring in seniors from another school, just in general. Most of our kids here, or most, I don't know the exact percentage, but many of our kids here are lifers. So they've been here since kindergarten or preschool, and in some cases, this is the first year where we don't have babies. We've been down to cribs. We start at 6 months.
Wow.
So we phase the babies out this year. So next fall we'll start with 1-year-olds, and we only phase it out because we need the room for other grade levels.
Wow. And for current enrollment, I know a lot of Christian schools, especially ones I've talked to across the country, like a lot of them are booming, like they're bursting at the seams, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, where do we put these kids? Or do we have to have obviously hit their cap?" Or have you guys kind of run against the same thing where you're full, like 100 kids on this wait list and you can't take them all in to help them?
Yeah, we will. And just about everybody I've talked to right now in Christian schools, and I would say even largely in private schools, are facing that same. I mean, it's a challenge. It's the best kind of challenge you can imagine, but it's a challenge nonetheless for a school like ours because we are landlocked and we have, a certain capacity, and we're going to be real close to it overall. We will exceed capacity. Well, we won't put that many kids in the classrooms, but if we could, we would exceed our capacity significantly this coming year. We already have weight pools in some grade levels, and we're having to get real creative to make additional space. For example, my office currently has nothing in it because I'm going to be moving along with my entire wing. We've remodeled a little building out near the front of the property for us all to move into in order to make space for more classrooms. So it's a fun time to be in Christian schools.
Man, well, it's probably a perfect segue into the first question I ask everybody is challenges. What are some current challenges you guys are up against, and how are you combating those as a school?
Yeah, so I really just went into the first thing that would come to mind is space. But I've talked about that already. It's exciting to see that, though. I would also, though, mention staffing. And I don't know if you've heard much about this, but there's a real teacher shortage now. We've heard that it'd be coming for a couple of years, but I think it arrived sooner than expected because of COVID. So many educators have fled the profession in the last 2 to 3 years. And then at the same time, you've got record low numbers of kids graduating from college with education degrees. And so it's kind of a perfect storm. It used to be that, for example, we would post a position for an English teacher in high school. Very quickly, you'd have, 40 to 50 resumes, and the luxury of really, picking through those and saying, here's my top 5 or here's my top 3 that I want to interview. That is, at least for our school, I haven't compared notes much with others on this yet, but I just know it's a reality in our country that, right now we'll post a position like that and we may probably get single digits of resumes. And then of course you hope and pray that there's a high caliber candidate in there. And sometimes that's the case, and sometimes you have to try to somehow expand your search, but it is very limited right now. I have a colleague at another school, or another head of school, who in early September contacted me and said, hey, we're dying over here. I can't find teachers. Can you send me your leftovers? Who did you guys interview that you did not bring on board that, was a decent candidate? And I checked with both of my principals, and we had nothing to send him. Just nothing. I mean, the folks that we did not go after, we wouldn't recommend. It's so slim. So that's a real issue and a real challenge that I don't really see getting better soon.
And that one has come up. I would say the top 3 that from interviewing people from all over the country has been enrollment, whether it's like too many and they can't fit them all, or too little and they need to grow. Teacher retention and recruitment, so getting them to stay and not retire early or go into another
right
position or role, and then trying to get them, just like you mentioned. And I'd love to dive into that a little more and see where do you think that deep rooted is coming from? I know you kind of mentioned a few, and is it because of this past couple of years where at the beginning of COVID, this is kind of what I saw, beginning of COVID, teachers were kind of praised, all the weight was on them for trying to teach these kids remote. And then I feel like it's kind of flipped where they've gotten upset at teachers like, oh, you need to come into the classroom. You need to bring in these kids and teach these. I feel like it's flipped a little bit, and every state may be a little bit different. So I feel like they're like, this is not worth it. Like, I'm not getting paid enough for this, and I'm just going to go do something else. I mean, do you feel like COVID has been a huge push of getting them out of the industry?
Yeah. I mean, it's for many from the outside looking in, even pre-COVID, it's not necessarily the most appealing profession for any number of reasons. And then when COVID came along, I know every school had to respond the best way they knew how, but there was no warning for it. There was no preparation. And all of a sudden, we had to throw together a plan. And so for us, that looked like, cameras in the classrooms, in every classroom. And because we were committed to still being able to provide some live instruction and have real engagement rather than just providing a template. And that I think we're effective in doing that, but the toll that it took on our teachers was pretty, I don't know, it's pretty brutal. And we were glad to end it that next year and just say, we announced we're not going to be doing that again, basically no matter what, because I felt if we tried to continue with it, I knew if we continued with it, we were going to lose probably a handful of high caliber teachers who just the level of stress. It's a stressful job already, but when you're trying to figure out how to engage people on a screen while engaging people in the room that are with you live, and you've never done that before, and you don't really have real training on how to do it, and half the time, really the whole family at the house is gathered around the screen viewing this as well. It's a lot of pressure. So I don't know. I think all those things, and then in Florida, the added challenge to that coming into this year is, when pay is already a challenge. Most private Christians, every private Christian school I know does not pay as much as public schools pay. I hope there are exceptions out there somewhere. I'm not aware of them. And we are not an exception, but we've always tried to be within 10% of where they're at. And so we have been. And then this year, to his credit, our governor jacked up public school pay significantly, and we went overnight. Now we're barely within 20%. So we had to really scramble, and then we did, and we put a whole new pay structure together, and so we're back to within 10%. But that period of time where our teachers are viewing, oh man, I see what public school's doing, or I see what they're making, I could make doing something entirely different and not have to face this compounded stress that COVID has brought. And they make different decisions.
And that's a valid point, because something I've also talked to some school leaders about is, for a lot of just about the pay. And I think that's the first thing everybody will jump to, because of course it's important. We have to pay our bills. We have to make money, of course, but the how you treat them, if they're a part of a community, do they feel, appreciated and treasured? And obviously I would hope as a Christian school, even more so, like that's what's obviously happening in these schools. People are like, yeah, I'm willing to make less because I'm about the vision of the school and in educating that next generation and giving them Christ values and all that. Because I know my wife mentioned that with her school. She went to Christian school in North Carolina, and her and I were just talking about this a couple of weeks ago, and she's like, the people who work there made thousands and thousands of dollars less a year to work there. She's like, I don't really know how they survived off of it, but they were just, they always worked there. And then we looked up her old school, because this was like 15 years ago, and a lot of them still work there. Wow, still bought in to this vision of this school. And I'm assuming, not to put you on the spot, they're doing probably some other things that public schools aren't doing to make sure that the teachers are appreciated. And just, I don't know. And if you are, I would love if you shared any of those things that maybe for the listeners, like, oh, I never thought about doing it for the staff that we have on board. Do you guys do anything specific for them?
Yeah, sure. First of all, I don't think we could ever really do enough. And so I'm confident we don't do enough. But one of the perks that our teachers experience is they have it, but particularly the ones that are parents and have school-age kids, is they have a significant tuition discount to have their own kids come to school here. Ours is not a low tuition. Actually, in the Tampa area, we're kind of right in the middle. So it's not the highest by any stretch, but we're right at $18,000 a year for a high schooler that comes to school here. Okay. And our cost of living in Tampa is high, one of the highest, I think, in the state, maybe in the East. It's nothing like California, but yeah, there are perks absolutely to teaching in a Christian school, but I think your point is valid also in that, and this is a calling. This is, we're here because this is where we feel the Lord has led us to serve. And so it's not a job. And there are components of it that at moments, certainly it feels like a job, but I think when you step into this work, you understand that there are going to be some sacrifices you make, and in the name of ministry. Now, I don't buy into that entirely as a leader, because I don't want anything to be cheapened in the name of ministry. For us, we want everything here to be excellent, and including the teacher pay. And we want it to be excellent because Christ is in the name of our school, and he is excellent. And so we better strive for that in every part of our operation.
I love that. And I had this idea. I heard this from somebody else a couple weeks ago, that they were looking overseas to recruit teachers to come and move, like integrated as a United States citizen, come in and to teach. Have you ever heard of that? Have you seen people been successful with it? Because I guess there's people that are like legit teachers overseas that have done all the training and have degrees and everything, but they're obviously making peanuts over wherever they're from compared to what we would pay here. And obviously people are having shortages and they're trying to get people. So they're hiring overseas to bring people in. I was specifically in Alaska that I heard that happening. Have you seen that been successful? Have you guys ever thought about doing that?
I have not. I haven't tried it and haven't honestly given much thought to it, but that may well be something that we have to consider moving forward.
Yeah, I'm curious how it works. I don't know if the schools like helps them with the visa and the pace. I don't know how it works, but I was like, man, that there's like a lot. Like when I was thinking of your friends, you mentioned that couldn't find anybody. I was like, man, I wonder if that would be an option. I think that's an idea that I don't know hasn't popped in everyone's head of like, oh, I never thought about looking outside the country for somebody to come in and be a teacher, even if it's for a year, like trial, or I don't know what they would call that, but yeah, just wanted to mention it. But any other challenges you want to mention before we jump on to the next question?
Just last thought briefly is this. I know this is not unique to our school by any stretch, but the COVID fallout emotionally and developmentally for our kids is very real. I'll tell you, I was a little skeptical about that when I first started hearing about it, but we definitely see it. It's different. And so hopefully that's not a permanent different, but right now, just the kids being apart from each other for so long, some of them more than others, some families, of course, kind of went on total lockdown at home, and those kids have taken longer to recover and kind of get back in a groove that they were in the school prior to that. So it's a challenge for sure. And that trickles up to our teachers, affects them as well.
And that one has come up on the podcast, and it's a horrible thing. I do agree with it. Obviously it's happening. And I heard something just last week in an article I was reading where it said the majority, almost every kid, again, there's always exceptions, but they kind of thought every kid has kind of lost a year of education. Like it wasn't obviously what it used to be when they were in front of the teacher. And so this article is saying they really think the whole country, the whole world should just be held back a year, which obviously we can't do that. We wouldn't do that, but they're like, that's what's technically needed, but we're not going to do we couldn't do that. Do you kind of, out of curiosity, do you agree with that statement? Do you feel like that's almost needed for a lot of students, but we just can't do that?
I wouldn't conclude that for the kids at our school. And I attribute that in part, largely, I should say, to the job that our teachers did during that year and the commitment we made to keeping it engaging, if even through a screen at times. It was I think we did everything that could be done. And so I don't think our kids lost a year. Did they, come out unscathed? No, I wouldn't say that either, but I definitely don't think they lost a full year. And specifically academically, there was an impact for our kids, but I don't think a significant one.
Okay. All right. No, I'm hitting you with all these curveballs that I actually haven't done with many guests. So I apologize, Shawn. I just have all these ideas I wanted to share.
I'm okay so far. I'll let you know if I go into a panic.
Okay. All right, deal. Well, we'll jump into the next part, which is my favorite part, really fun part, giving you a chance to brag about your school. What's going really good for you guys that you're really proud of as the head of school? Like what's going really good? Give you a chance to kind of brag a little bit.
Yeah, I would first say relationships. And that's the last time I'm going to talk about COVID, because I've enjoyed not talking about it for a while. But kind of the post-COVID, the masks, 99% of our masks on campus are gone. And we have a more open campus than probably most schools would be comfortable with or feel like is a good idea. We're still very tight on security and who walks onto campus, but our parents in the morning for our whole lower school, many of them walk their kids to class. And so we probably going through that COVID experience was probably more traumatic for our school and our families than it may have been at other places, just because of how far the other end of the spectrum our normal daily existence is here. So what's going well there is just a return to normalcy and seeing faces and having the interactions that for us are paramount, those relationships on our campus. And then I would also, despite challenge we talked about with a teacher shortage, I mean, God has delivered some amazing high caliber leaders and teachers. I emphasize leaders because I made a Zoom hire, for example. I made a couple Zoom hires, but I made a Zoom hire from a guy in California to be our upper school principal. You think if there's any position you want to meet in person before you make a decision like that, that would be it. But that wasn't an option at the time. It was, spring of 2020, and he's phenomenal. And so we're very thankful for that, for sure. We're named a Blue Ribbon School a year and a half ago. And so that has been a huge boost for us in many ways, I think, ranging from morale, just a recognition for the hard work that our staff has put in and the quality that they're delivering. But then it certainly hasn't hurt business in our admissions office either. I think some people may just search they do a search on Blue Ribbon schools in the area when they're moving into it, and we're there now. So that's been very fun to see and rewarding. Two more things, do I have time to keep going?
Of course, please keep going.
Yeah, so one would be, we launched a STEM program here, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And so relative to many STEM programs across the country, it's still in its infancy, but nonetheless, the students this year, a group of largely freshmen and sophomores, were able to obtain a grant from Lemelson MIT, and it was for an invention, and that invention is called Moses. And the purpose of Moses is, first of all, I will not do justice to describing it because the kids in there all understand it and I don't really, but its objective is to get rid of red tide. And so this little vessel that will have its own, it can be motorized and will have its own sensors and everything else, and will travel through the bay searching for red tide, identifying it, communicating that to certain organizations in town that need that information. And it's really exciting. But the kids won that grant, and so they're going to be traveling to MIT to be recognized for that. And they're trying to decide right now whether they want to try to patent it and move forward and really own everything that happens with Moses, or potentially sell it. So that's exciting. And the last thing I would mention is I talked all about our space challenges, where we have groundbreaking 2 weeks from yesterday for a new high school facility. That's been a long time coming. The last new building that went up here was about 25 years ago. So we're more than ready and excited. And that'll help us with this growth.
Wow, and that's probably going to be a couple of years out then still. They just broke ground?
So we'll break ground in a couple of weeks, but it's tilt wall construction. And so in normal times, it would only take a year to build it. We'll see, what supply chain and other current challenges with the economy and availability of materials, what all that makes happen. But we're hoping it'll be not much more than a year to put it up.
Wow. Is that off campus, like far away from where you guys currently are?
No, we have a 4-phase master plan that we're going to stay right here on the land we have. We're going to demo what needs to be demoed and move kids accordingly. But we don't see any need to ever disrupt education or our classrooms. We just have to phase things in strategically, and that's going to be right here on our current property.
Wow. Is that going to raise enrollment numbers then when that opens up? And how much will it raise it?
It'll certainly raise capacity. I hesitate always to lock into the if you build it, they will come idea, because last time I expected that, I was at my former school and I arrived in 2007. And you remember what happened in 2007, and everyone there had already subscribed to the idea, if you build it, they will come. We were moving into a brand new building, and they didn't come because no one was coming to Christian schools for the first time in 2007. So it was a brutal time there. So I don't make that statement anymore. So we're optimistic, but we'll see.
Okay, very good. Well, my final question that I love to kind of wrap up the podcast with is just putting it back in your court for a little bit and letting you share what would be that one thing you'd want to share with any of the school leaders that are tuning in.
It's relatively simple and hopefully not cliche, but I would just say, stay the course. Every one of us have days, even if not everyone admits it, when we wonder if it's time to hang it up and go a different direction. During seasons of, staff discontent, parent anger, and in some cases mounting litigation, grass can definitely start to look greener in an entirely different lane. And as we were talking about, I've just been seeing so many educators walk away, some of them longtime leaders in education, and that just doesn't bode well for the future. That may not apply to all school leaders, but like I was saying earlier, I feel called to this work, to this service. And for us, our model is kingdom education. We want to partner with the parents and partner with the church. We're not a ministry of any one church or denomination, but so we have partnered with a local small C church. And so with the parents and the church, together with them, we're trying to raise up the next generation of leaders, and we're trying to prepare kids not only for college, but for life. And so we don't care just that they lead, but we care about how they're leading. And we pray that would be with integrity and conviction, with biblical principles. And so I just want to encourage all my fellow school leaders out there to stay the course. There's much to be gained, certainly for the next generation, but it can be very rewarding for us as well as leaders.
I love it. Shawn, this episode has been fun. I think there's going to be a lot of people that get a lot of value from this episode. We dove into a lot of things that, again, I haven't dove into as specific as you and I got into for some of those subjects. So I appreciate you rolling with the punches, as this is why I don't do rehearsed questions either. I kind of just have the main ones, and then if other ones come up, we tackle them. And they were great because I think people are going to be able to learn from this and talk about teacher retention and recruitment and different ideas. That's my vision for this podcast, that people will be able to learn and be able to take things back to their school to help to be more successful and to grow. So you guys are doing awesome things. You're doing great things there at Cambridge. So please continue to keep up the awesome work that you guys are doing. And wishing you guys nothing but the best in all that you continue to do there. All right. So thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Shawn.
Thank you. My pleasure entirely. I enjoyed it.
Well, another huge shout out and a thank you to Shawn Minks for taking time and being on the podcast today. I really enjoyed our chat, and I appreciate him being willing to take some of those curveballs I threw at him, because I was just super curious about a lot of the things that we were talking about. And I'm hoping, as I always say, guys, that you're able to take at least one thing from today's episode, especially today's episode, take it back to your school to make it better than it is right now. Maybe it's around teachers. Maybe you are looking to recruit teachers. Maybe the idea of finding somebody overseas to come in and take on a position, maybe that is something that's of interest to you. Whatever it is, I just hope you guys are always looking to better your school any way that you can. And if you're looking specifically to grow your enrollment, connect better with your families, I'd love to talk with you and show you how we can help your school grow. You can check us out online, schoolmakers.com. That's schoolsuccessmakers.com, or please join our free Facebook community just for school leaders called School Success Makers. I'd love to see you in there. Start chatting about different school strategies and ideas that you have. So we'll see you in there on the free Facebook community called School Success Makers. We'll be here next week with another amazing guest as usual on the School Success Podcast. We'll see you then.